Danny, I know you're a massive fan of the lightweight e-bike category. In fact, it's pretty hard to get you to shut up about the things. But one thing you don't talk very much about is the price.
You got me bang to rights there, JD. I mean, the problem is most diet e-bikes are ludicrously expensive, right?
Yep.
And there's a couple of reasons for that. Making things light costs a lot of money. And the other reason is that direct sales brands haven't penetrated the market yet.
Hang on there, Danny, I'm going to stop you because there is something new that you're going to find pretty interesting.
Okay.
Here it is. Canyon has just joined the party with the brand new Neuron ONFly, and it is the cheapest lightweight e-bike on the market, bar none.
That's great news. But hang on, Jamie, what is the name of this bike again?
The Canyon Neuron ONFly.
Oh my God, that just sounds like Canyon have boxed themselves into a corner with their naming conventions.
You could be right. You could
And
be right.
so no one's had the courage to put their hand up and say, hang on guys, this is ridiculous. No one's going to remember that name.
Totally.
I mean, why don't they just call it the Neuron Fly?
Yeah, or the Neuron Ron.
The Neuron
Yeah.
Ron, the Neuron Ron. And potentially it's confusing to customers, right? Because Canyon also has a Neuron On, right?
Yep.
Because I know that because I went to the launch
You were
last
there.
year.
You rode it.
And it's got a more powerful, more torquier motor, I should say, the Bosch SX motor. So we've got an SX and a CX. But apart from that, I mean, it looks really similar. It's got a really similar sounding name. I mean, there's a lot of potential for people to get confused, right?
Yeah, totally.
But if we park the name to one side for a second, you said it's the cheapest bike on the market. So
Yes.
how much is it?
So this is the CF7 and it will cost you £4,649, which is not Henfutter, as the Germans might say.
Sorry, hang on a minute. What is that?
Henfutter, as the Germans would say.
Hen food.
Yes, hen
Chicken
food.
feed.
Chicken
I
feed.
got it,
Thank
right.
you. Yeah, it's not chicken feed. But, you know, that for a lightweight e-bike, that's pretty modest. You've got to compare it against the competition, which is double, maybe even 3 times the price of this bike. So, yeah, I think it's a pretty comprehensively priced bike.
Yeah, I mean, we had the Cube AMS 144 recently, right? I mean, that was, I think, almost £1,000 more expensive with the same motor. So, yeah, it's a significant price reduction, right?
Yep. Yeah, it totally is, yeah.
I mean, we haven't ridden it yet, but I mean, it looks $1 million, right? It's got
totally.
a really sleek carbon frame. I love this sort of low standover, drop top tube. Everything looks like really compact. We've got a super slim down tube. I mean, it actually looks kind of like an analog bike in a way, doesn't it?
It does. You could be forgiven for thinking it was. They've definitely worked hard to slim this down. Well, it's been helped by the smaller battery in there.
Exactly.
But yeah, it looks, it looks like a normal bike.
I'd say it was lean and athletic, yeah?
Yeah.
Chiseled.
That's how I describe it
Toned.
too. Yeah. I would be tempted to say, Danny, that it is the best looking e-bike in Canyon's range.
I think I'd agree with you there, but we've talked long enough about the aesthetics. Let's go for a rip and see how it rides.
Yeah, let's do it.
Nice.
Pretty agile, huh? What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, totally. They've followed the template for the modern e-bike, right?
Yeah.
We talked about this in the recent video, right? So you put the shock underneath the top tube.
Yeah.
Means that you've got more space down here in the main triangle. So you can lower the standover height, lower the top tube. You can get the battery as low and central as possible, right?
Yeah, and you've got space for your water bottle, or in my case, it doesn't come with this, but you can buy a Powermore range extender to go with the bike. It's 400 quid. So you need the mount, you need the range extender, and you need the little cable.
That's crucial, right? Because they weigh a lot.
Yep.
And you want to get that weight down and central and as low as possible, because that is going to really influence the handling of the bike when it's mounted.
Yeah. And also, I think it makes a difference to the aesthetics. It's like they've done a pretty good job getting it nice and low. It's not quite like White did with the E-Lite, but it's low. It looks good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All right, should we get off?
Yep.
Wow, that's so drifty, so loose.
I know, right? But
Yeah.
then there's compromises made on this bike, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the tyres for one.
Yeah. So they've
Yeah.
put these tyres on, super fast rolling, really low friction, but they don't have the kind of ultimate grip in sort of loamy turns like that. But
Yeah.
they'll give you more range.
Yeah.
They'll let you pedal faster on kind of flatter tracks.
Yeah, anything with jumps that's flat and smooth and pedally, like this bike rips and stuff like that. When it gets a bit steeper and a bit chunkier, you feel like you're missing those tyres, don't you?
Yeah.
You lose a bit of squish, I think, as well, because you have to pump them up quite hard so you don't puncture. And with that, you lose just a little bit of suspension, a bit of comfort with it.
Yeah, absolutely. They're not the widest either, right? But swings and
Yep.
roundabouts.
Yeah, so it's not the only compromise either that's been made. It's 140 front and rear, so we are talking about an out-and-out trail bike and not an enduro bike for sure.
Yeah, and there's a good reason for that, right? It's
Yeah.
all about saving
Yeah.
weight, yeah? So they can put on an inline shock rather than a piggyback. They can put a 35mm chassis fork
Yeah,
rather
no-
than a
no
36 or a 38. So, it makes total sense.
Yeah, and they've also made this bike a Category 3E, which, if you're familiar with your European specifications, as I know you are, you'll know that means that it is a trail bike. It's not for doing, 6-foot hucks to flat. It's, for single track.
Yeah,
like
basically
most of us ride, really.
It's tested and certified
Yep.
to a certain level of riding, isn't it? A kind of severity of riding, and this is graded.
Yeah.
And 5 is like free ride, rampage stuff, and 4 is kind of enduro, 3 is trail. So it's that means that they don't have to make the frame and the parts are strong, do they?
Yep, there's definitely some weight savings to be had there. I think.
Exactly. Right, time for another lap.
Yeah, let's go.
Right, what are we waiting for?
Get out of the way.
Man, you really got to rev this motor, haven't you?
Yeah, it's kind of like a 2-stroke rather than a 4-stroke.
Yeah, totally. But I think Canyon make a really smart move by fitting the Bosch motor,
Yeah.
because it just gives the consumers that peace of mind of having that huge company behind it and all the backup.
Yeah, it's a really smart move as well because it's actually really good as well, isn't it? It's really powerful. It's got, 55 newton meters of torque or something, 600 watts peak power, if you can get it that high. Like it's a good package.
It is, yeah, that's right. I mean, the 600 watts only comes when you're doing like 120 RPM, but
Do you ever go that high?
I mean, I think we pretty much were getting it up there, weren't we? But
Yeah. But if you compare that with the CX motor, like I've done back-to-back climbs on this motor and the CX, and I can definitely go faster on the CX motor, even though technically they both have the same 600 watt peak power output. So I guess that tells you something about how fast you can actually spin the pedals.
yeah, absolutely. And the key is it's horses for courses, right?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
motor suits a lighter, more analog feeling bike because you have to pedal it harder. You have to put more effort into extracting it from the motor.
Yeah.
So it suits the character of the bike perfectly. So one of the other things I really love about the Bosch system, right, is there's no wires for the remote on the handlebar. You've got a really simple display on the top tube, which gives you all the info you need, but without all the extra kind of superfluous stuff. And then even silly things like the speed sensor on the wheel the magnet is on the valve, right? And then there's the sensor is in the back of the motor, so you don't have a cable running through the chainstay. Just little things like that
yeah.
make a big difference.
Canyon also told me that you can actually remove the control on the bar as well and operate it just from the little button on the top tube,
Yeah,
which is
you
really
can.
cool. Like an even cleaner bar. Like
Yeah.
it's great.
And then you've got the whole connectivity aspect. So you can connect this to the app and you can configure each of the power profiles, how sensitive the torque sensor is when you put your foot on the pedal. When you really ramp it up, you touch it and it wants to go.
Yeah.
And also the assistance level as well. You can tune that in each of the modes. There's a GPS module in the bike, so you can track it. There's like anti-theft device. You can use it for recording your rides. There's a ton of technology going on with the Bosch system.
I will say something about that though, Danny. I think it's €39 or something subscription for that each year, which isn't a big deal when you're spending this much money on a bike, I suppose. But it's also like just down here. I feel like you could kind of take that off, or a thief could potentially.
Well,
take
now
that
you've
off.
told them where it is.
That's true. Cut that.
But it is free for the first year, though. Yeah.
don't know
It
about
is
that,
free
actually.
for the first year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how about the battery life then, Danny? I mean, like you've ridden this SX system a bunch of times. Like, is it enough for you? Like 400 watt hours internal battery that you can't remove on this bike? Is that enough?
Well, we did the range test, right?
Yeah.
Around here, and we got just under 1,000 meters in turbo mode, yeah? Which is pretty good, but obviously it'll depend on a lot of factors. So rider weight, the trail conditions, how many climbs, how steep they are.
Yeah.
But this bike will ride further than the one that we tested because it's got super fast rolling tires, and that's really going to help. But you know, you've got the range extender, right? So
yeah, that's 250. So it's called a Powermore 250. So obviously it has 250 watt hours of extra juice if you need it. So
it's more than 50% of the internal battery capacity.
Yeah.
And I think the great thing is that if you're doing your ride in the week, like 30K, whatever, you can just use the internal battery. You're not taking any extra weight around with you. And then if you know you're going to ride longer or further at the weekends, then you've got the option to take that. So you're only taking the weight when you need it.
that's totally the way I found it. Like for most rides, actually having a water bottle instead of the range extender is the better option for me when I'm just riding on my own. And then, yeah, you ride in a bunch or you ride with riders on like full power bikes, then you definitely want that extra juice.
Yeah.
Okay, enough talking, more riding.
Let's go.
Left me hanging.
Yeah. So I noticed that you've sorted yourself out with the fancy model, yeah?
Yeah, you're not wrong. This is not the top of the range. This is the CF9, which is £6,699, £2,000 more than your bike. But you get a few more bells and whistles with that.
Well, you'd hope so.
So my bike gets a better fork as well. It's the Pike Ultimate, which means it basically has a better damper inside it. You get a few more settings. You can adjust like the high speed and the low speed compression, which you can't do on that bike. You get better brakes as well. You get the SRAM code silver brakes. You've basically got the basic codes on your bike. It's great that Canyon has spec'd the same shock on all the RockShox bikes as well, which is really, really cool because in theory it should mean everyone gets the same ride experience, whether you're paying, you know, £4,500 or £6,500 for this bike.
And even more important than that, right, is that when they do the shock tuning for these bikes, so usually they would probably try the most expensive shock and that'll be the shock that they'll tune.
Yep.
And then the cheaper bikes kind of just get a tune based on that, but they may or may not actually ride that bike with that shock. Some, I'm not saying that Canyon don't, but some brands might not. So at least on this, you know that they've tuned it, you know, that's exactly how they want it to ride, like right or wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, it's really important.
Other than that, I'd say the only other thing that's different is
Hang
that
on. You've got something pretty significantly different to yours. There's no wires coming out of your gear shifters.
yeah, I did forget about that. That's the SRAM T-Type transmission drivetrain GX on this bike, which is pretty posh. And they've actually done a really cool thing. They've done it wired wireless. So you don't get the battery that you forget to charge and then drive somewhere and go, oh crap, I can't change gear now. It's wired into the main battery of the bike, so you never have to worry about that again.
That is good. I mean, it does sound a bit counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it makes a lot of sense. You're not going to forget the battery inside there. You don't, you know, you're going to charge that up every time you go riding anyway. So it uses a tiny proportion of the power. And I think even when this is flat, it still has plenty of charge to power the rear mech. So that shows you how little it uses.
Yeah, yeah. But then your bike's got a perfectly competent drivetrain on it. You're talking about a 12-speed Dior, aren't you?
Yeah, we've got Shimano mechanical drivetrain, 12-speed. We talked about the shock being the same. The wheels are slightly different. They're not DT Swiss wheels. And I've got a less sophisticated damper in my fork, but you can buy those, the upgrades for those at a later date. So
you could say that Canyon's kind of made that bike to be upgradable, couldn't you? At a later date, it's like it's got the right shock, the frame's the same, it's got a serviceable drivetrain. You know, the only thing you'd probably want to upgrade maybe in X years to come is that damper in the fork.
That's the part that will make the most difference to the ride quality. I mean, the wireless gears are lovely to have, but you know, it's not really going to dramatically improve your riding experience. So the damper wheel. So yeah, I mean, I think they've done all the important bits are pretty dialed on this entry-level bike.
Okay, big question then. Would you rather have that bike and have £2,000 kind of in your back pocket to spend on, you know, fancy riding holiday or whatever, or pay £2,000 more, get this bike and live off beans on toast for 6 months or whatever? What's your choice?
For me, it's a no-brainer. I would go for the entry-level model. Then I could have cash left over to buy the range extender. I could get the fork upgrade if I wanted as well, or I still have 1,500 quid to go on a wicked riding holiday somewhere. I mean, that sounds great to me.
If I was thinking with my head, that makes total sense. But now I've ridden this bike and, you know, you've ridden the transmission gears and I've felt that better fork.
I mean, when you've travelled first class, it's hard to travel coach, right? That's what they say. But
I don't know. I've never tried.
No, neither have I.
But that's got to be the sensible choice, isn't it?
I think so. So we want to hand it over to you. If it was your decision, would you go for the entry-level model here with £2,000 tucked in your back pocket, or would you stump up the extra cash for the high-end model? Do you think it's worth it? Let us know in the comments.